Which one are we going to move?
We'll do one next week, and then we'll skip the 30th and do it on the 6th.
Small groups is the 30th, not the 30th, not next week?
Well, a lot of groups aren't. No, because we had this marriage. This is just a fair warning. We will be naming people to move to the front pews if we don't get some people moving up. So. If your name is Justin and you're on the same bench as another Justin.
At Jefferson Baptist, am I on? Huh? There we go. At Jefferson Baptist, I preach on Wednesday night service, and there is about 120 that show up for that service, and the sanctuary seats about 900, and people will sit in the back like you all were doing. And so then what I tell them is, I said, you all know that I pray for everybody in the church by name every week. And those of you who are sitting from that pew back, I'm going to pray that God infest your yards with gophers. And the next week, if you don't sit in front of that, then I'm going to pray that God gives you severe diarrhea. And so you're hoping that that kind of prayer God doesn't answer, but I personally wouldn't risk it. So anyway, I don't know you, so I can't use that other than, Lord, you knew who it was. Would you straighten them out, please, whatever it takes. All right, so we're on a marriage thing. Sorry about last week missing, but that's kind of the way it was. I got in a car accident and was feeling a little sore still from last week, so I'm glad you had fun without being here. So we're on a lesson entitled Communication Etiquette. And so when Patty and I got married, there was nobody on the planet Earth that was more different than we were in every category. I was a country boy, she was a city girl, she liked to talk, I rarely talked, and on the list went of our differences. Now the one that showed up the worst, the quickest, was the communication thing. My basic rule was any problem will go away if you ignore it. And Patty didn't believe that. She thought that if you talked about problems, then you could solve them. And I thought talking about problems just made them worse. And so we just kind of had this difference of philosophy in regards to communication. And it wasn't just issues or problems, it was everything. Whether it was finances or where we were going to go on a day off or whatever. We just didn't talk about things. And so my wife, she began putting some pressure on me. And I think I told you this story, but one day I came up with a solution. I said, I tell you what, I'll pop the popcorn, you buy the diet pop, and we'll watch Monday Night Football together and talk during the ads. Sounded like a good solution to me. The response I got from her was she started crying and left. I thought, here I am trying to cooperate with this communication thing, and all I get is this. And so we had some adjustments to make in our marriage, but we did, and we made some basic rules. I'm a kind of a rule person. I make goals and I make lists and I establish guidelines and rules and just do that. And so I said, okay, let's go out for dinner and make up some rules that we can both abide by. And And so we called it our communication etiquette. Now, it's been refined over the years, but basically this is the stuff I'll give you tonight is the same thing we started with 50 years ago as we began working on our communication. So I'll just tell you this first one. You'll think this is really funny. We never talk about anything that's serious standing up. Because there's something about standing up that just kind of, that's what you do when you fight, physically. You're standing up. And there's something about standing up that is not conducive to graciousness or calmness. And so we just have this simple rule. We never talk standing up. We don't talk about anything hardly standing up. We always sit down and talk. And so that was a first rule. And then the second rule we made, and we don't have this one so much now as we did early on, is that we don't talk about anything serious at all that's inclined to be contentious at home. Because we tend to be on our worst behavior inside the walls of our house for whatever reason. And so if we're going to solve a problem, fix something, work through something, we're going to go on a date. Now, that did several things. One was we had the date every week. We had a date every week for most of our married life. And so whatever we had, it was going to wait until Wednesday night or whatever night. In the early days, it was always Wednesday night, which did a lot of things. It postponed it so the emotion was gone, and then we could think about what we were going to say, and both people could. And then when we went to the restaurant, we sat across from each other and we talked, and we solved our problems every Wednesday night. We had conversations about everything under the sun. And we had all kinds of great conversations. Now, the first thing that tends to create conflict in couples' lives is their finances. Now, our finances were really tight when we started. I was farming, and my dad paid me $500 a month. And so we didn't have a lot of money. And I wanted to spend what extra money we had on fishing stuff and hunting stuff, and Patty didn't. And so we had a bit of a thing. And so we would go out on a date, and we would sit down with a piece of paper, and we would spend our money on paper, basically write a budget between the two of us, and we would agree about that as we talked back and forth and made concessions on various things, and it worked quite well. When I started pastoring, one of the rules we had was any money I got from weddings or funerals, I got to spend on hunting and fishing. I used to say people were just dying for me to go hunting. But it was just a great way to stay unified was to come up with these guidelines and rules as we would solve problems. So we didn't have to go through the same thing again. Anytime we solved a problem, fixed something, we made some guidelines or some rules. So the next time, this is what we did. This is how we did it. And so now, I don't know, I can't remember the last time we had any kind of an argument or disagreement or fight about anything, because we worked through them all and got rules and guidelines for all of them. We kind of do it almost automatic. And now it's pretty silly little things, and it's mostly on my part. Just, even tonight I'm sitting in my chair. Patty's going to visit some people, and she says, when you leave, would you make sure you shut the door? I always shut the door. So my temptation was to say, woman, quit bossing me around. But I didn't. I smiled. I said, yes, dear, I'll shut the door. And then, but this, she's getting ready to go out the door. She says, and before you leave, would you make sure the dog is in his kennel? And I said, I kind of clenched my teeth a little on that one. Yes, I'll do that. I'll shut the And so that's kind of the only thing. And sometimes when we go out on our date, I will make mention of the fact that she tends to tell me to do things that I always do. And she will say, well, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure it happens. I said, all right, I will be very patient, and you can tell me to do anything you want, and I will smile and say, yes, dear. And so, but we talk about it, and we make jokes about as much as we can, so that it isn't stuff that's a real, we downsize it. Over the years of pastoring, I've discovered that people can make mountains out of molehills, especially in relationships. A problem, you run over it and go over it until it's just become this monster thing, and when you get right down to it, it's kind of silly. In fact, if any of you read my blogs, I wrote about that tonight. I said, I'm borrowing a Dodge pickup because my Ford pickup is totaled, and I'm waiting for my insurance money to get another one, and at least 6 people have said to me, "Oh, you finally got some sense in driving a Dodge instead of a Ford." And I wrote in my blog, that was the most rude, obnoxious thing a person could say, and I am highly offended and probably will never speak to them again the rest of my life. And so everybody knew I was kidding, but then I made the point of saying, that's a silly thing, but I'm amazed at how many big fights happen between people over something that silly. And so talking, thinking, working through things, the idea is to shrink it down and give the other person the benefit of the doubt, as they may not thought the way you thought, assume the things you assumed, and so you're always giving grace, as it were, and being kind. So we'll go through the notes here. Number 1, key to growing marriage is lots of good communication. So we're capable of talking. We've been created in God's image and His likeness. God spoke. He created by speaking. We have power in our speaking, and it's a basic, simple thing. The more we talk, the more unity we will have, provided that the talking is relatively intelligent and free of irritation, anger, the negative stuff. Number 2, husbands and wives typically do not understand each other's motives, desires, and needs. So we are quick to make judgment. So when Patty says, "Would you please close the door?" the first thought that pops into my mind is, "You just like to boss me around." Well, he isn't even close to being her motive. And so we make assumptions, make judgments about other people's motives or reasons for doing things, and often they're not close. And so we don't know what those are, and that's one of the things we talk about, is the why of certain actions, a way of doing things. It says, husbands and wives typically do not understand. 1 Peter 3:7, there's a command that is the most difficult command in all the Bible, as far as I'm concerned, and that is, husbands, live with your wife in an understanding way. It's like, huh? You got to be kidding me. That's beyond superhuman. But I'm working on it. I'm getting really good at it, at least better, at understanding Patty, why she does what she does. And we're driven by desire, and our desires are often way different. I have a desire to be by myself as much as possible. Patty has a desire to be with people as much as possible. That's just the way she is. If she's by herself for 5 minutes, she goes berserk. If I'm by myself for 5 minutes, I become a very calm, peaceful, highly intelligent person. So we have these desires that drive us that are different. And so I don't understand why somebody would want to spend their time with a bunch of other people. But she does. And she can't understand me, why I can go fish for 8 hours by myself all day long. Just me and the water and the fishing rod and the fish I catch. She says, wow, that would be terrible. Really. It's like heaven. And so all of us are different in the way we're wired. Extrovert, introvert, spiritual gifts, whatever it is. And so understanding is figuring out why people do what they do, what drives them. And so I think I told you the story about me discovering her spiritual gift. Did I tell you that in the vacuum cleaner? Yeah. Anyway, I remember the time that sort of dawned on me. My wife loves to help people. And when she's doing that, she's superwoman. And when she's not, she's sort of unfulfilled. And I thought, all these years, I've been stingy with my wife, saying, oh, you can clean our house. You don't need to go to neighbors and clean their house. You can cook a meal for me. You don't need to cook. And when I finally dawned on me that this was where her joy came from, and realized that I was keeping that from happening in her life, I felt like a pile of dirt. But it was basically not based on my selfishness, though it sounds selfish. It was just based on my lack of understanding. What drove her, what made her happy, what gave her energy, what fulfilled her. And recognizing that what makes her happy isn't necessarily what makes me happy in the sense of ministry or life or etc. So communication has a purpose more than simply sharing information, is gaining understanding. What makes the other person happy? What fulfills them? And so I ask questions along that line all the time, and Patty does as well. I discovered that my wife has some basic needs that aren't mine. I discovered that she has, I've written them down as I've kind of observe these, is that she has about 5 basic needs and some days 20. I only have 2. And so way easier for her to make me happy than it is for me to make her happy. But I've discovered what they are, and I work real hard at meeting those basic needs. One of her basic needs is security. And so there's certain things that give security, there's certain things that take that away from her. And when I plan out our finances and take care of next week, next month, next year, it makes her really happy. Me, it seems like, I like to live on the edge, you know? It's more exciting. My wife doesn't like the word exciting. She likes to be secure. So the other day, I bought 2 plots for us to get buried in. And I bought the headstones. And I made all the arrangements. And I came home and told Patty that I did that. And she says, "You are the best husband in the world." And so I did that because she kept asking me, "What are we gonna? We don't have to leave that on the kids if we get in an accident." I said, "Why not?" And so, I mean, she kept asking, and I recognized, okay, this seems to be kind of bugging her. So when I gave that sort of little gift to her, okay, plots are bought, headstones are bought, all the arrangements are made, I can die tomorrow. And I said, besides that, I planned my entire memorial service. She said, "Well, I didn't mean for you to get that carried away." That's a need, security. And so I figure out what makes her insecure. Perfect love casts out all fear. And so if I'm going to love her, I'm going to discover what she is afraid of and take care of that so she has security. And so how did I discover that? By talking and listening. Good communication. Number 3, we must be taught by our mate how to make them happy. We are each other's marriage manual. And so that was my question when we went on a date. And it was always the same question, and she knew it would be the same question, so she was always ready with the answer. The question was, what one thing can I start or stop doing that would make you the happiest woman in the planet Earth? Now, I was limited to 1. I could only handle 1 at a time. And so she would think that through and then share with me something I could work on, something I could add or change or stop or start that would make her more happy. And so sometimes I didn't quite understand it, so I would ask a question and she would give me some more information and ask a question. Pretty soon I had it down, figured out pretty clearly, okay, this is what I need to do, not do, etc. And then I would do the same. She would ask me that question. And sometimes we have to repeat it because we forget and we start doing it again, and usually it's just little things that irritate or offend or embarrass or something of that nature. The last time we had this dinner and I said, "What one thing can I change?" She said, "You know the story you tell? I would like it if you would never tell that story again. It's really embarrassing." I said, "Oh, darn, that's my favorite story." And so she said, "So what one thing can I do to make you the best, happiest husband on the planet Earth?" I said, "You know, sometime when I'm telling a story, you correct it. That's really embarrassing. I mean, you basically are telling everybody in the room that I'm a big fat liar or have a terrible memory. I mean, if it's fishing, that's okay. I can exaggerate a little bit, and you don't have to correct it or whatever. Most of the time, I just forget. Most of the time, she forgot. But regardless, I said, would you just not correct me in front of people when I'm telling a story about the details? So when I tell a story about her and I try not to tell them when she's in the room because she will yell at me. That's not the way it happened. Calm down, woman, calm down. So I've told her that. I remember the first time I made that statement, I said, Patty, I don't have a clue how to be a good husband. You need to teach me. Now, if you'll teach me, I'll listen. I'll pay attention. But don't assume I know what I'm supposed to do, that I understand what I'm supposed to do, because I don't. And you assuming I do and making me feel bad because I don't just isn't working. So if there's something I'm not doing right, just tell me what it is, and I'll fix it. I'll change it. Number 4, the problem is that we don't teach well and we don't learn well. So there's a book written by Bruce Wilkinson years ago, and it was called, there were 2 of them. One was called 7 Laws of the Learner, and the other one was called 7 Laws of the Teacher. And they were written for pastors and for Sunday school class, anybody that was involved in the teaching kind of thing. And I read it because I am a pastor, and I thought, wow, this is a great marriage manual. And so we read it together, mostly the book on 7 Laws of the Learner by Bruce Wilkinson. The 7 Laws of the Teacher was written by Howard Hendricks. And so we talked about how we both teach the other person and how we learn from the other person and some of the things that we don't do right, both in teaching and in learning. And so from that, we made some rules, some guidelines. And one of them is, don't assume I know what you're thinking. I don't know what you're thinking unless you tell me what you're thinking. And that was one of the things that Patty, in her talking to me, would most often mess up on. She would take these big jumps, and the gap in between she assumed I knew when I didn't have a clue what it was. And so I would have to ask a question. She would back up and fill it in, and then she'd jump again, and I would have to ask some questions. And pretty soon she figured out that I'm kind of dumb. I don't read her mind very well. And so that was the rule, is I don't know what you're thinking unless you tell me clearly what you're thinking. And so I had to coach a little on her teaching. She had to coach a little on my learning, and back and forth. So we got good at communicating in a way that the other person could understand and understand clearly. And we assume that the other person understood because we talked. But often our talking is unintelligible. And so learning how to speak clearly, and it's just the 20 question things with us. Patty talks, I ask a question. Do you know the number 1 rule she breaks? And she still breaks it as many times as I've reminded her of it. It's just kind of ingrained in her system. She never uses proper names. All she says is he, she, they, through the whole conversation. And after about 2 seconds, I am totally lost about who she's talking to. And I say, wait a minute. Who are we talking about? Well, Sam, of course. Oh, okay. And then she'll go a little pretty soon. I say, whoa. Who are we talking about? Well, Seth. It's like, I should have known. Well, if she doesn't say their name, I don't have a clue, but she's thinking it, but she will say they, him. And so okay, now say names, please. Okay. So she does until the next time we go out to dinner or have a story, then she's back to her pronoun thing. But she's getting better at teaching me by communicating in a way I could understand. So we have these communication glitches. We don't communicate well, and we don't listen well. And so we came up with this little exercise. I heard it from somebody, but I don't know where, but I just say I invented it. And so we sit in the restaurant opposite of each other, and Patty talks, and then when she's done talking, she'll have a salt shaker in front of her. that means I can't talk. Only the person with a salt shaker can talk, no interrupting. So when she's done talking, she passes the salt shaker over to me, and then my assignment is to repeat what I heard her say. And then when I'm finished repeating what I heard her say, I pass the salt shaker back, and then she tells me what I got right, what I didn't get right, and she will fill in the blanks and give it to me, and then back to me, and I will repeat it again. Oh, you got it right that time. So this time it's in front of me, and I tell something about that I would like her to know or understand or to get, and I pass it to her, and she repeats what she thought she heard me say. Now, it's amazing how little that I say that she hears, and vice versa. We think if we said it, they heard it. If we said it, they got it, when in fact, that's not the case very often. Did you know that when you're parenting kids, they only hear about 10% of what you say? Then they don't do what you say because they didn't really hear what you said. And so you can blame that on them, or you can take responsibility and say, I'm the communicator, I'm the teacher, as it were. I need to make sure they get it, they understand it, by asking some questions, getting some feedback, and then I know whether they did or not. And so we do that same thing. We make sure we understand each other fully and clearly. There's nothing that's misunderstood. Number 5, another problem is that married couples often pick up bad habits of rudeness and communication because of familiarity. And so sometimes there are little things, just statements that are kind of offensive or rude or hurtful. And we'll do that with our spouse when we wouldn't do it with anybody else, just because of the fact that we see them all the time and we're more comfortable with them, and we don't take as much effort, make as much discipline to talk graciously, kindly, without any words of offense as we would somebody, like if you were talking to your pastor or to me or somebody else that is important. But when we talk with our spouse, and it's a lot less disciplined and we're a lot less careful with what we say, and so we're quick to say things. We pick up these habits of saying words, statements that are rude and offensive. And so that's one of the things on our dates. By the way, the bottom line in this whole thing is go on dates. I have 28 grandkids, and I would like to have some great grandkids before I die. So I'm doing some coaching with my older grandkids, and I'm kind of teaching them how to find the Christian husband or wife. And in fact, I'm making some connections with the guy and the girl, and I successfully did that with my granddaughter, guy in the church. Oh man, he's a champion. And I said something to him about her, and I said something to her about him, and did that several times. Then I gave her phone number to him, and because they weren't connected in church, there's too many people. And I said, just to send her a text and say, hey, I'd like to have coffee with you. And I said something to her. I says, could I get your phone number? I'd already given it to him, but I said, could I get your number to give to so-and-so so that he can text you? She said, Grandpa, I'm not comfortable with you giving my number out to guys. Oh, that's too bad. Anyway, they've gone on 6 dates. It is my fault. I don't know why I said all that. Dates. They're on a date. Cool. I've dated my wife just about every day once I decided she was the one I wanted to marry. There were simple things. We would watch Mission Impossible in the TV room on the college campus, or we'd go to church together, whatever. But I was with her a bunch on dates and just talked. And so now we do the same thing every week. Very rarely does a week go by that we don't go on a date. The only time we don't go on a date is if I'm gone hunting or fishing or riding my bicycle. Then we can't because I'm not home. But whenever I am, we go on a date. And Patty came to this thing the last 2 weeks ago when we did it, I think. Is that the one on prayer that she and I prayed together? Anyway, she came, and so when we went home, we stopped off. We went home through Albany and stopped off at Denny's and I had steak and eggs, and I think she had a salad. and we talked. That's what we do on dates. She sits on that side, I sit on this side, and we look face to face and we talk about whatever. And so we've done it enough to know that that's where we're going to solve our problems. That's what we're going to communicate, that somebody did something that hurt our feelings or whatever. We won't do it spontaneously. And so that communication is super, super important. 6, we will tend to talk to our spouse in a way we would never do with a friend or work associate. So one of the things that I talked about to Patty at a date was when I called her on the phone, she would put me on hold. That just irritated me to death. And I said to her when we went on a date, she had a lady friend that she talked to on the phone regularly. I said, if Lucy called you, would you put her on hold? If I called? And she says, probably not. But you would put me on hold when she calls. Yeah. Why? Did you know that makes me feel really insignificant in the sense of who your friends are, down at the bottom, because you would do that? And so I just used a word, and I'll get to it in one of these points, that was very, very important in communicating information to the other person about what they do, and that's the feeling word. We're not going to communicate that what they did was wrong. What we're going to communicate is that what you do makes me feel insignificant, unloved, unappreciated. You can't argue with that. What I feel is what I feel. What she feels is what she feels, and I don't want to make her feel bad. I want to make her feel happy. Why she feels bad about something isn't the issue. The issue is it does. And so if it does, then I won't do it. And so I said, when you put me on hold, it makes me feel like Lucy is about 10 times more important to you than I am. Now, I know it's not true, but it makes me feel that way. And so that's all it took. I've never been put on hold again. It helped that Lucy moved to Bend. 7, a major key to good communication is to establish rules that both agree to and work hard at keeping. That is a super, in fact, when I do marriage counseling, we'll always make at least one rule in the marriage counseling. Here's a rule. And so they both agree to it and find it. When I was a kid, my dad was in the Navy for 22 years, and he retired when I was 12, and he was on an aircraft carrier for the 5 of the last of those 12 years. And so Mom would follow the aircraft carrier wherever they came into port on the West Coast. We would be there waiting. So we traveled a lot. We moved 23 times by the time I was 12 years old. And we were in and out of ports. We lived in the Plymouth station wagon. And what we did to pass the time of day, us 5 kids, is play Monopoly. I always won. And the reason I always won is because I was the only one at the time that could read very well, and I read the rules on the box top, and then I would communicate it to them. Well, the rules kind of changed a little bit. And because they changed a little bit, they were always in my favor, and I would win. And you wouldn't believe the number of rules we have in Monopoly now. We were thinking about it, talking about it the other day. The grandkids were playing Monopoly, and I said something. They said, "Grandpa, that's not a rule." "Sure it is." "And it's not on the box." "Oh, must be one I made up." So, if you watch football, there's referees and there's rules. When you drive, there's rules. If you go to Hanoi, Vietnam, drive, and you'll get killed. There are no rules. Everybody does whatever they want. Do you know what driving in Hanoi, Vietnam is like? It's like the days when we used to roller skate. You know, and you roller skate around, and you bob and deep, and that's how they drive in Hanoi. It's crazy. Everybody honks on the horn all the time. There's water buffalo pulling trailers. There's guys on motorcycles. There's every kind of vehicle imaginable. There's stoplights, but nobody stops, and they just honk. It's absolutely crazy. I like driving where there's rules. I got in this accident because this dude broke the rules. And so if we follow the rules, then things go well, whether it's football or Monopoly or driving or whatever. And so average husband and wife doesn't have any rules. If they do, they change all the time. And so it's good to talk about those because then both set them. We agree to what they are. And so we have a whole list of rules that we've made over the years and that we follow them carefully. Number 8, agreed upon rules are a great way to be able to remind our spouse of what they are doing wrong without causing a fight, because we've agreed on it. And one of our simple little rules is don't make dysfunctional statements. A dysfunctional statement is when you say, you always do that, or you never do that. There's nobody who always does anything. And so there are these dysfunctional statements. And so if I say, well, you always do that, she'll say, oh, sorry, you occasionally do that. So it's a simple rule, but it really keeps things in line. Number 9, the first and most important rule is never, 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 ever, ever speak in anger or irritation. So we made that rule together. Now, because we agreed upon that being a rule, then she could remind me of that without me getting irritated because it was a rule. Now, the simple way she does that, she doesn't say, you're getting angry. She says, I love you. That's all it takes. And that's the string that pulls my choke collar. You're getting angry. When she says, I love you. And when she says, I love you, she has just a way of saying, she kind of puts her head out a little bit. I love you. It's like, oh, yeah, I love you too. And so I calm down. I talk slow. And I don't get irritated or angry a bit. It's been years and years and years since we have, either one of us, gotten angry or irritated at the other one because we made it a rule. Can't do it. Now, Patty never had any problem with that. She never got angry. I don't know if I've ever seen her angry, except maybe at the dog. But I got angry. I still get angry. I just feel it inside. I don't let it out. But, the emotion of anger, Ephesians says, be angry, don't sin. Well, I'm always in a hurry, and I've always got deadlines, and there's always people messing up my schedule, and this is going on. So I always have this feeling in me, but I've developed this self-control so that I smile and talk nice in spite of the way I feel. I can do that. So can you. I don't have to act the way I feel. And so that rule helped that. Number 10, another great rule and a fundamental principle of good manners is to do not interrupt while the other person is talking. Work at really listening. And so our basic motto here is, I will honor you by paying sincere attention to your words. I will honor you by paying sincere attention to your words. And again, that's one of our I love you commitments. And so if Patty's talking to me and my eyes are glazing over, she will say, I love you. Yeah, okay, I'm listening, go ahead. And so it's just a way of reminding each other of the rule. And so I will honor you by paying sincere attention to your words. We taught that to our kids when they were little. Honor your mother and father. How? By paying sincere attention to our words. Eye contact when we talk. You don't look at the floor or out the window. And so we do that with each other as well. Number 11, a super important rule is to never insult or attack our spouse's character or motive. So one of the verses that Patty memorized is a wife who shames her husband is like rottenness to his bones. And so the rule we have is never to embarrass the other person or shame them or belittle them and attack their character in any way. And so we remind each other of that. And so that's why Patty says, I wish you wouldn't tell that story anymore. It embarrasses me. She's not here. I'll tell you the story that she wants me never to tell. I told you the story about when she dressed up like a guy and went to the basketball game. Well, I said in the story that I looked and she looked, and that look hooked me. But what really happened is that she looked and she went like this. And I looked the other way. And she hates that. So I never tell that story when she's in the audience. Don't tell her I told you, okay? It makes her feel like maybe she was, I don't know. But and she says she didn't, but I know she did. But regardless, we ended up getting married, and it was a part of the whole story. 12, learn to communicate to your mate about their faults and feeling statements instead of that was wrong. And so we did that with our kids. Patty she coached me on how to do it. Instead of saying that was bad, that was wrong, is to use feeling statements because then it connects you in the sense of this is what you do to me. This is how I feel when you do that. It's not you bad person. It's more of a lack of understanding. I didn't really know that, and now I do. And so when we communicate with people that we care about on feeling statements, I feel this way. You made me feel. My grandson came in the other day, and he come running in the door. He's a hyper kind of a kid, and he came running in the door, and he saw me, and he ran over to me, and he says, "Hi, Grandpa. How's your day?" I said, "Great." And a little bit later, I walked up to him, and I handed him a $5 bill. He says, "What's this for?" I says, "Courage, you made me feel so special when you came in, and before you did anything else, you came up and said hi to me." And so, so you have to do that again? I think so. I think more so because of what I said than the $5 bill, because I probably won't give him another one for that same thing, but I got his attention with that in the sense of, you made me feel so special. And so that feeling word is very powerful in motivating our other people's behavior, because we like making people feel good. We don't purposely do something to make our wife or our husband feel bad. We just tend to do it. But once we get communicating to each other about what things make us, how it makes us feel, then we're motivated to change that behavior. 13, work very hard at making your communication style as gracious as possible. I go up to Alaska for a month in July, and I am a guide at this lodge. And there'll be 15 people there fishing, and I fillet all the fish. We're talking 10-pound salmon, 12-pound salmon, and so if the limit's 6, and we got 10 people there, that's 60 salmon, and I fillet every one of those fish. And so I like my knife to be really sharp, and so I have a good knife, and I have a good knife sharpener. And did you ever look at a knife blade when it's dull? Magnify it 20 times, 30, 40 times. It's straight, but it's got all these little edges, rough spots on it that stick out one way or the other. And so when you sharpen it, you're simply knocking off those rough edges so that it's a nice, smooth, straight line. So I have a lot of rough edges, and I don't realize it, but I do. And so the goal is to become as gracious as possible, as kind as possible in the way I talk and the way I act with Patty. And so I tell people this all the time. The biggest problem with husbands and wives is the husband treats his wife like a man and the wife treats her husband like a lady. Now, President Trump just declared that's off limits. I try never to throw politics in, but I couldn't resist that one. So, I'm a man. I'd like my wife to talk to me like a man, not like a woman. We talk like what we are. I'm a man, and I talk to guys, so I tend to talk to my wife like it doesn't go over well. And so I work at trying to talk to her in a way that's gracious and kind and considerate and makes her feel good and appreciated. And I can do that. I can learn Spanish. I didn't, but I could. And I learned Greek. I can learn how to talk to my wife in a way that makes her feel good if I learn. And she can do the same with me if we learn and work at it. 13, work very hard at making your communication style. Oh, I just gave you that. And notice the word work very hard. Work very hard. It takes some work to do that. So the way my dad put it when he was giving me counsel, he said, you got to learn to talk like a woman. I said, I don't want to talk like a woman. You're not going to talk like a woman to me. You're going to do that with your wife. And you got to learn how to do that. And, okay, so I have. And we have great communication. Ephesians 4:29, let none unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, only such a word as is good for edification, according to the need of the moment, that it may give grace, to those here. When our kids turned 10, I gave them a Bible study assignment. And I said, when you do this, when we finish, I'll give you $50. So they were highly motivated. I said, I would like for you to write down longhand on a piece of paper every verse in the book of Proverbs that has anything to do with the mouth, the tongue, speaking. And I'll give you a hint. There are over 50. That's why the $50. So if you get 50, you get $50. So they would do that. They would read it through. They would write them down. Usually the first time they read through, they got about 10. That's a long ways from 50. So they would read it through again, and they'd get some more. Pretty soon they would get the 50. And then after they all got it at 10, when I gave them that assignment, I say, okay, now your assignment is to read this every day for a month. And, you know, they said, when I said that, how much money do we get? I said, well, okay, I'll give you some money. How much do you want? So they would read it. And once they had written them down longhand and then read them every day for a month, it was amazing the impact it had on how they talked to their brothers and sisters and to other people. I'll read a few. Proverbs 10:32, the lips of the righteous bring forth what is acceptable. Proverbs 15:23, a man has joy in an apt answer. How delightful is a timely word. Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Those who love it will eat its fruit. Proverbs 18:6, a fool's lips bring strife. Proverbs 12:18, there is one who speaks rashly like the thrust of a sword, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Proverbs 15:4, soothing tongue is a tree of life, but perversion in it crushes the spirit. Proverbs 16:24, pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul, healing to the bones. Proverbs 23:16, my inmost being will rejoice when your lips speak what is right. Proverbs 25:11 through 12, like apples of gold and settings of silver is a word spoken in right circumstances. Like an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. And so those impacted our kids tremendously. And occasionally I'll go back and read them all, the list that I have from their list. I cheated and read theirs, got them all. But I read them because it makes a difference. 14, dates are a great time to talk about tough issues, which I've already said a number of times. So I think I told you this last time we got together, but I eliminated a ton of marriage counseling with three things. When they would come for marriage counseling the first time, we would talk a little bit, and then I'd say, okay, I'm going to give you some assignments. First assignment, go on a date. And I would teach them about the salt shaker thing. Second assignment, pray together twice. Third assignment, here's a book. Read the first chapter together. And so I said, call me next week. We'll make a time for the next appointment. The first question I ask is, did you go on a date? Did you pray together? Did you read the chapter in the book? If they said no to any of those, I said, okay, we'll postpone the next meeting for a week. And there were, at least half of the people that came once never came again because they wouldn't do those assignments. And so my basic rule is if you don't want to work at it, I'm not going to spend my time with you. It's going to be a waste of time anyway. And I found that if I could get them to go on a date once a week, pray together twice a week, read a book one chapter a week, they didn't need me. They would just grow. And it's a pretty simple assignment. Go on a date once a week, pray together twice a week, read a book on marriage, one chapter a week together, talk about it. And there you are. Best marriage in the world. doing those 3 things. And if anybody's curious, you can send me an email and I'll send you the 12 best books ever written on marriage. And that'll last you at a chapter a week for a long time. But great conversations come out of that. But the date thing's very, very important. So husbands, you arrange the time and place and the babysitter. Don't put that on your wife. And when you go on the date. And then she'll enjoy the date a whole lot more if it's not her responsibility to figure out how to make it happen. Okay, I don't know if it's time yet, but I'm going to quit. Any questions? We've got 10 minutes before I'm officially done. Say it again. Oh, I got one that I didn't get to. Oh, another page. Look at that. 15. Ask this question on your dates. What one thing do I need to change in order to make you the happiest wife on the planet Earth? So that's my question. And Patty asked the same. We don't do it every time now. We've kind of gotten to the point where we've got it figured out. But in the early days, that was so vital to being able to communicate what you were bothered by without starting a fight. Because I asked the question, she was answering. She asked the question, and I was answering. And so it's a good question to go from. All right, good question. Any other questions? Okay, I will close in prayer and we'll be done. And we're are not meeting next week? We are. Okay, next week we will meet. Lord, thank you. Thank you for our spouses. Thank you for the way you worked out details and brought us together. And I pray for each marriage here represented tonight that you will work in it, make them one, even as you, Father, and Jesus, you're one, that you will cause them to become one, that they would abound in love for each other more and more. Because of your Spirit working, because of the discipline, the diligence, the effort they make. Thank you. We love you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.